So welcome everyone. Lovely to see you again this morning. I hope you had a chance to rest since yesterday and ruminate on what we covered. It certainly seemed to be, when we were reflecting as a faculty at the end of the session, it certainly seemed to be a really rich session, particularly looking at the sculpt. Seemed to be a lot of really interesting data that came out of it. And of course, as we said, it was a bit of an experiment for us to be running it on that technology. So I hope that's given you food for thought and maybe a bit of additional confidence for doing that with your own teams. But welcome today. Here's the timetable. So we're still very much in the co-creating space, where we're looking at the team, how it functions, dynamics. So we're going to do a bit of work this morning at starting off at 9:20, at looking particularly at dynamics and how we use the secrets, or sometimes rather bizarrely called the dead dog exercise, into bringing out some of the unspoken thoughts and unspoken teams. So some of those dynamics which might be going on beneath the surface, ways in which those can be surfaced within the team. And then a bit later on, after a break scheduled at 10:50, we'll be moving into causal loops, red and green behavior. So this is more around the behavioral side, how we can support teams with tools to look at what are the most helpful or the least helpful behaviors, how they can be a bit more cognizant and choiceful about those things. And then hopefully we're trying to leave a reasonable amount of time for some discussion, reflection, all of those good things that are particularly valuable when we get together. So before we launch into the agenda and some of the input items, let's just take a moment to arrive. And I'm going to invite you to think a little bit about what you want to get from the session today, how you want to show up, what's going to be of most value to you. And I'll talk you through just a kind of quick exercise that can help get into that right frame of mind. So what I'm going to suggest you do is stand up. Of course, if you're not feeling well or able to stand up, just stay in your chair, but make yourself nice and comfortable. And the key thing here is to try and stand somewhere where there's a sense of space in front of you. So you might find if you can look out, face towards a window, or just somewhere where you have a sense of kind of a bit of open space in front of you. And if you're comfortable to close your eyes and keep your body relatively still and stable. So just with your eyes gently closed, take a moment with your feet hips width apart, getting a sense of stability and stillness in your body. And then take your attention down to your feet and feel that connection with the ground. And imagine there are roots growing out of your feet, and have a sense of those roots spreading deep into the earth and anchoring you down into the ground below you. And notice that sense of solidity and stability that comes with having strong roots deep into the ground where you stand. Get a real felt sense of that. And then know that these roots represent your beliefs and your values and those fundamentals that you know to be true and which provide a firm footing from which you can engage with the world. Take a moment connecting with those. And from that place of stability, take your attention up to the crown of your head and feel a brilliant beam of light shooting out of the crown of your head and connecting you to the sky above you. Like a laser beam shooting up into that space overhead, and feel your body stretch up into that space. Feel that connection. And know that that space above you into which you can reach through this beam of light is your connection to your spirituality, or at least your higher self. Or perhaps it makes most sense to you to think of it as purpose. But the higher level on which you're able to operate, just connect into that space above. And then bring your attention to the back of your body and use your senses to really feel into the space behind you. Imagine all the nerve endings in the back of your body, the back of your head, your shoulders, your back, opening up to the space behind you. And know that behind you are your ancestors, your family, the DNA that's been passed to you through the years, and indeed your own past, all those things from which you've learnt, which have made you stronger. Some of the most challenging things in your own past from which you've learned and grown. And know that all of that is there behind you, bolstering you up, and there for you to draw on. And now feel into the space either side of you, to your left and to your right. You might even just sway slightly from side to side to feel into that space. And know that in that space, side to side, are the people that love you and support you. Your tribe. Those that wish you well. Those who will be there for you. And remembering yesterday with the sculpting exercise we did, the sense of community that many of us experienced, the sense of having people here with us today to whom we can turn for help and support, who are part of our learning tribe. Know that these people are shoulder to shoulder with you, as well as others who may be further away. And then when you're ready, open your eyes and just look at that space in front of you, and know that this space opening out in front of you represents the day ahead and the session that we have in front of us now, the next few hours. Just take a moment to feel into that space and connect with your intention. What do you need from today? How do you want to show up today? How can this be the best, most useful, most valuable time? How can you make that happen for yourself? And then just take a couple of nice deep breaths to settle back into your body. And when you're ready, sit down if you're not already. And maybe we'll just take 60 seconds. And if there's anything that occurs to you that you want to jot down about your intention for today, let's just take 1 minute of quiet time to reflect on your intention and what you need from today, and make a note if that's helpful. So that's our minute up. So thank you for your attention during that, and I'll hand you over to John and Moira.
Thank you, Neil. I'd like to sign up for the full day experience, please. Genuinely? So feel just very different, actually. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Question from Victoria: why is it called the dead dog exercise? We'll come to that, Victoria. So between now and 10 to 11, so for 90 minutes, which is a good amount of time in which to experiment with this. You know, it may not take the full 90 minutes, and if so, that's fine. To engage in this activity, which we call secrets, or sometimes it has been called in the past the dead dogs, which is really where that comes from, is you know, getting the dead dogs and putting them on the table. So bringing out the things that are hidden and revealing them. So we moved on from dead dogs because we thought it didn't sound very appealing, and I even think maybe secrets isn't quite a great descriptor. I quite like calling it surfacing. You know, surfacing what's underneath. If you've done the Systemic Team Coaching Certificate with the AOEC as opposed to with Peter, you probably will have done this exercise, this activity before, and it's good to do it again. And it's really about, you know, bringing into the room something that hasn't been in the room before and bringing it out for discussion. Hilary was referring yesterday to those two sort of systemic ideas of future back and outside in. Sort of systemic awareness begins future back and outside in, but it also sort of begins inside out, I think, as well, you know, where we sort of reveal what's going on in the system, which is usually contained in the sort of thoughts, conversations that are bubbling around, but which are not made explicit. And when we bring them out, we sort of help to reveal the system. So when we're working systemically, it's a very helpful thing to do. And it's actually often why team coaches are called to work with teams, because the team doesn't have the ability to bring that to the surface itself. And I remember working with a team maybe 3 or 4 years ago, where doing this formed the main part of our work. I went down to meet with the team leader, and he described that all of his team members came into his office every day and sort of had the same conversation with him on a one-to-one basis about stuff that was going on in the team, but it was never talked about in the team. So it was sort of pushed out into the periphery of the team. And if you think about the potential amount of energy and time that can be taken up and wasted, indeed, having back channel conversations about things that are going on, if that's made explicit, it really helps the team to perform better and create high value. And it made me think of Lencioni's Foundation of Trust, where, you know, if team members can be open about pretty much everything, actually, that's what really creates the foundation for a high performing team. So if they can admit their mistakes quickly, you know, freely, if they can confess their fears freely, if they can disclose their misunderstandings quickly, then it really helps to build the foundation for the team to perform well. So we're going to you know, we also say that addressing these issues is the responsibility and accountability of the team itself. And if it's another great legacy, if you have a team coaching engagement, to leave a team with is this, the ability, having learned how to do this, the ability to do it. This activity also avoids blaming an individual or making a person a scapegoat. Reminds me of that saying of Peter Hawkins, which is not locating problems in people, but locating problems in connections. And it's about facilitating a dialogue that just enables the team to address the challenges that are going on underneath the surface. It's interesting, I was just been reading Otto Scharmer's book, Theory U, recently, the most recent version of it. And he talks about this process of inversion, you know, getting things out. He talks about opening the boundary and move what used to be inside out. So bringing it out into the open. So we're going to, I'll just explain how we're going to do this. And Moira, if you want to move on to the next slide. So I'm going to invite you to, firstly, before we do this, just a little bit around the structure of it. If we have all of us, so the idea is to facilitate a discussion, and if we have all of us in the group facilitating a discussion, it could become quite unwieldy. So we're going to ask for 6 people to represent the group and to bring into the room the voices of the whole group. But in the first instance, we'll ask everybody to participate, and we're going to do this using Jamboard. As Alex correctly said yesterday, sometimes whenever we're using a piece of tech, it can sort of become all about the tech, and we miss the moment to actually think about what it is we're working on. So before we start using Jamboard, I'm going to ask us to do this just on a piece of paper. So if you have a piece of paper handy and a pen, I'd like you to think about something that hasn't been said or hasn't been shared. So maybe something that you're carrying, something that would be helpful for us as a learning community to bring to the surface. It's good to go through this process actually of thinking, how do you share something? That's a good discipline in and of itself. How do you share something that you haven't shared yet, and share it in a helpful and constructive way? So it could be something that's bothering you. It could be something that you haven't had the courage to share yet. It could be something you haven't had the opportunity, or you've wanted to, but the moment has gone, and that it would really add to the learning community if it was brought into the open and help to build that atmosphere of trust. When you're writing it on a...
John,
yes.
Can I just do a very mini timeout,
Yeah.
please? I just wanted to check with you, maybe to ask you to double check with the group that they're happy that we are recording this exercise. I know we're recording the session overall, but because of the sensitivity potentially of the exercise, maybe we should double check.
Yeah.
And I'll be guided by your conversation.
Okay, so maybe if we can just share the screen briefly, Moira, would that be so that I can see everybody? So just following on from Hillary's helpful question there, can I just check with everybody to give me a wave if they're happy to continue recording this? Okay, so I'm trying to look and see, has anybody not given me a wave? Maybe if you haven't given me a wave, could you put the little, so if you go to the reactions and there's a little face there with a little sort of a surprised face, maybe you could give me a little surprised face if you haven't agreed. Okay.
So
Yeah.
may I ask a question? It's
course.
about how far do these, I'm fine if it's just for the group, and I'm fine anyway, but I was just thinking, following on from Hilary, how far do the recordings go? I mean, I would only be using it for myself. We haven't actually
Yeah.
contracted around how we use the recordings which are available for all of us. So that would be my only hesitation. I'm fine otherwise. I'm fine anyway, but
Yeah. So I'm open to be corrected on this, but my understanding is that they are used only for the group.
Yes, correct.
Yes. Yeah. So does that makes it okay, Harriet, to record? Was there anyone else there who wasn't happy? So we're okay to continue. Grand. Can I just ask as well, if Moira, could you just keep an eye on the chat box as well and let me know if there's anything there that's of interest? And if you could reshare the screen, that would be great. So I was inviting you to take a piece of paper and a pen and write down a sentence of something that it would be helpful to share. And if I could encourage everybody to participate in this, it would be really good. And I want you to imagine it being read out. So sometimes when we've done this exercise before, people have written down one word, which maybe like relationships, which doesn't tell you anything. So I want you to imagine that somebody's reading it out. So it should be meaningful, it should mean something, and should be understandable. So maybe if I can ask you just to take a couple of minutes and do that. So Jessica's question, are you looking for one thing or could we list more things? I think my preference would be one thing per person. So pick the one that's most uppermost in your mind. And Alex, your question, one thing equals one word. Is that a question to Jessica?
No, it's probably for you, John. Is it just one thing as in one word to write down on that? Or?
No, it would be a sentence.
A sentence.
So I want you to imagine someone reading out a sentence, and so it should be meaningful. And normally if it's just one word, we have to sort of decipher what it means. And your question, where are we doing it, Deborah? We're going to do it on Jamboard. So I'm going to share a link in Jamboard shortly, but just for now, I would like you to do it on a piece of paper so that we're not messing about with a Jamboard.
So John, sorry, just to ask about the sentence. It's a bit like you're writing a statement.
Yes.
Okay.
So it needs to be something that everybody would understand. So something fairly specific about this community that you've just not had the opportunity or not given voice to yet, but something that people would understand.
Yeah, okay.
And Tracy, your question, I'm making the assumption that this is about voicing something that's likely to not be working as well and we want it to improve. How often do people share something that is positive and celebratory? Answer the second one first, not very often. Although I didn't want to necessarily plant the seed that it should be something that isn't working. It probably will be, because normally if that's the thing that isn't shared, is something that we have some sort of trepidation about, or we're worried about, or we're not sure how it's going to land with others, so we keep it under the surface and it sort of bubbles under the surface. So it is likely to be something that's not working, and we want it to be better.
And something that if not spoken might get in the way, of course, of the
Yeah.
team functioning well.
So Moira, if I could just ask you to unshare the screen again briefly, just so that I can see everyone. And I just want to check, has everyone been able to do that? And if you need more time, give me the little surprised face emoji. You're struggling to think of something, Harriet? I think it would be good if you know, we can get everybody involved and then we have a representation of everyone. Okay. So I'll share the Jamboard link in the chat. And what I would like you to do is to open that link and you'll see a screen with secrets at the top of it. Okay. And just want you to pick a post-it note, which if you've used Jamboard before, it's about halfway down. So it's the fourth icon down on the left-hand side. And just transcribe into that post-it note a sentence that you've written on a piece of paper.
So John, Alex is saying he's getting access denied, and so am I.
Oh,
So am I too, yeah.
No problem.
sorry, what was that?
We're having access denied, yeah.
Yeah. So I think all those pings are people having access denied to my Jamboard.
Yeah. It sounds like
We could bring up a whiteboard and just annotate it in text boxes on Zoom.
Yeah.
I think, John, if you click on share, and you might have
Share.
a distribution list of everyone, you can just pop in everyone's email addresses there and we'll have access instantly.
Okay. So only people.
Or maybe change the link, get the link below.
Yeah, John, if you go back and change it to, if you go back to share.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And if you click the bottom one, change to anyone with a link, click that.
Yep.
And then copy the link again. And drop that link in the chat. It should then work without permissions.
That's it.
Fantastic. Okay. Okay, try that now.
Yeah,
that's good work, John.
Phew. My heart rate went up there. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Alex. So as I'll just share this board as you guys begin to populate it, okay? And we'll be able to have a look at it. So just bear with me a tick.
Yeah, John, sorry, can you just repeat the instructions about how we write stuff in there?
Okay, so if you pick a post-it note, which is if there's a little menu bar down the left, which has 8 little images on it. And if you pick a sticky note and just write your statement on the sticky note.
I can't see any icons or sticky notes.
What are you on, Tracy? What are you using?
I don't know. I just clicked on that link, but I think other people aren't seeing it either.
I can't see it either, John.
Yeah, it's.
I can't see it either. Maybe you could share the screen and show it to us.
For some reason, it's it says the owner needs to be an editor.
Yeah, we're in view mode at the moment.
I see. Okay, let's see if we can change that.
I don't know if it's worth saying that mine's entirely in Danish. My Danish isn't quite up to some of the pointers. So if you're doing it for somebody else who hasn't yet mastered the language they're living in, just be aware of that.
Okay.
I don't know why it's done that.
I love all the animals joining us though, the rhinos and the bats. Fantastic. Free for the day.
Blobfish.
So does anyone know how to do this? How to share how to make everyone an editor?
So if you've shared the link, now we can all see it. I don't know if it has some further settings to allow people not just to view or to edit with the same drop down. But if it doesn't, it's as easy as grabbing everyone's email addresses and sharing with them with the share button. If you have the distribution list, you can grab it from an email invite.
Yeah, or if you go back, John, to if you click on your top right of your screen where it says share.
Yes.
And it'll bring up that same thing as before. On the top right, you'll see a little settings symbol. You click that. Make sure it's ticked where it says editors can change permissions and share viewers and commentators. Are both of those boxes ticked?
They are, yes.
Oh.
So John, if we need it, I've just copied everybody's email address.
Okay. So do you want to try that then, Moira? Do you want to lift that link out of the chat box and email it to everyone?
No, you need to add our emails into the back of your settings, yeah.
So, okay, I've got the emails. If someone can tell me where to put them, I'm happy to do that. Is it the share?
No, you need to send them to me, Moira.
Well, there's a send the link, add people to send the link to. That's not right, no?
Maybe you could share your screen so people like Alex and Chris can have a look.
What happens if we all request of editing rights from you, John? If we go
John would need to click allow for everyone individually.
Yeah, well, I can do that.
Because if you go to top right where it says share or view only, if you do the bottom thing, it says you can only view this document, make changes, ask the owner for edit.
John.
Yeah.
Sorry, what you need to do, if you go back to the click the share button again on the top right. And the bottom bit where it says get link, anyone with a link can view.
Yes.
Yeah. When you click on that again, you'll see anyone with a link. On the right hand of that, it'll say viewer with a little down arrow.
Yes.
Click the down arrow and click it to editor.
Yes.
That should do it.
Wonderful.
Chris, will we need to refresh our browsers now then?
Possibly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's worth doing. Just
working.
Yeah. Work for me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, well done, everybody.
So I'm going to share the screen, and then you can see them coming up. And if I can ask you, whenever you're sharing your sentence, to keep it as much as possible to the left-hand side of the screen. It'll just make it easier for whenever we're reading these statements out.
So John, it's still not working for Harriet. Harriet, I'm wondering if you could send somebody your message privately who could put the post-it on for you.
Yeah.
Would that work? Harriet, I'm just wondering if that would work for you.
So can I just ask you again, and if we look at that statement that's just been put up there, be more connected, not only in our supervision group. My suggestion would be to expand that sentence slightly and say something like, I would like to be more connected. So to make it in, so that there's one, I would like to see a stronger connection. And we'll spread these out a bit so that we can see them all. When you put your post-it up, just make sure that it's not, as much as possible, not covering another one.
John, could you just talk through how you get the post-it? Sorry, I'm struggling to get a post-it on.
So if you, is there a menu down the left-hand side, Tanya, on your screen?
Yes, there is.
Do you see the fourth icon down where it says sticky note?
Yeah.
You just click on that, you'll get a box open up. Yeah.
Thank you.
And if you're clicking on the box and nothing's happening, you're probably on the shared screen rather than your own Jamboard.
Yeah, you need to be on your own browser.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I've forgotten to get on there. Oh, Lord.
Could I invite the person who's written jealousy on the wild horses to make that into more of a sentence? So what is it that's happening about jealousy on the wild horses? Articulate it as a meaningful sentence. This is me just moving these to make sure that there aren't any hidden underneath.
John,
Yes.
I'm just trying to activate my sticker.
Uh-huh.
And I'm, for whatever reason, when I press, nothing is happening.
So can I just double check, may I see that you're using it in your own browser and not on the Zoom screen?
Okay.
So you need to go into the browser.
Yeah, just give me 1 second. Nothing seems to happen. I am in my own browser, I think, but nothing is happening.
So just talk me through what you're doing, Mayasi.
Okay. I'm using on the left side menu.
Mm-hmm.
There's this little icon with a T in it.
Yeah, so use the one that's fourth down, which is not the one with the T in it, but the one that is 4 from the top.
So under the black circle with the arrow, my essay.
Okay.
And that should bring up a square on your screen with some color options, and you can type your text into that and save it.
I had that, but all of a sudden it just disappeared. Ah, okay, there we are. Thank you.
So if you can just let me know verbally if you need any more time.
12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. We've got 19 comments up, John.
Yeah. And we have, we should have 2 more then.
We're looking for 21 if there's one for each person. I think there's 20 up now.
I'd really appreciate some of them being made a bit bigger.
Okay.
If that's possible.
So Deborah's saying, grab the edge of the box and pull it out. That's it. I can see someone doing that with the turquoise.
That's me. That's me.
Yeah.
What I would invite you to do now is, before we move on, is just to, as I'm making them bigger, have a look at them, read them, see what it brings up for you. To what extent do you resonate with this? How do you feel that it's being shared? Is this something that you've seen before? Okay. So if everyone has shared, I'm just going to stop sharing for just a moment. Okay, so that I can see everyone. Okay. And Claire, have you just joined us? Yes. And you're looking for a link to the canvas. So yes, I'll share that now. And can you see that, Claire? Lovely. So what we'll do now is we'll ask for 6 people to represent and speak on behalf of the whole group. So just to reassure you that what you'll be doing is you'll be reading out what's on the screen. You'll be reading it out as if it was yours. Okay, so putting the same amount of feeling and conviction into it as if it was yours. So effectively giving voice to what's written on the screen. And then myself and Moira are going to invite you just to identify some themes. See if you can cluster them together into themes. And then we'll facilitate a discussion on what's on the screen. What does it bring up for you? What's your reaction to it? What, if anything, needs to happen with it? And at no point will we ask anyone to say which one of them is yours. So it'll be a general discussion around giving voice to this. So could I just ask everybody to share the little wave emoji? Everybody apart from the faculty, just to share the little raise hand emoji.
John, why are we doing raise hands?
Trust me, Deborah. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, once you've done that, is to, if you really don't want to be part of the discussion, just to take it down, okay? So I can see people who would be willing to be part of the discussion. Okay.
Can I also put thumbs up?
Okay. So is it okay if I see 8 people? So if I can just pick the first 4 people that I see, which is Devo, Tanya, Jenny, Ian, Alex, and Deborah. Okay. So there are 6. And I'm going to just invite everyone else to switch off your videos. And at this point, I'll reshare the screen. Okay. So, Devo, Tanya, Andres, did I call your name, Andres? As one of the people? No? Yes? You're on mute. So guys, if you can unmute as well, that would be really helpful.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to invite those of us who are left here to read out what's on the screen. So it might be helpful to, if we just move them over to the left a little bit, and just so that we know what we're reading out as we read them out with a certain amount of conviction, we'll move them over to the right so that we know what we're reading out, okay? And I would just invite you to take turns. So starting with Devo, if you would mind starting. And as you read it out, I'll just move it over to the right of the screen.
And John, just pick any one.
Yeah.
I'll start with a one it's got big enough writing for me to read. I would like us to embrace our growth edges more. There, you've got it, John.
Lovely. And someone follow on from Devo.
Okay. I feel not all supervision groups are working as well as they would want to. And people are jealous of the wild horses.
I can continue. I'd like to be more connected with the people, with the whole group, not just with the supervision group.
Okay, I'll go next. I would like to have more check-ins as we go to hear and understand whether people need and or want more time on the teaching element. How could we support each other to really embed learning, understanding and practice? And for the faculty to be okay with teaching even more at different times.
That's not the right one, John. It's
it's the one below it.
Looked very similar.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm happy to go next. I want to hear more stories from faculty of their experiences.
Bottom left, there you go, John.
Who's next?
Yeah, let me go next. So, how to hear the quieter voices in the group to become a whole and inclusive learning community.
Documents. I wish the documents could be sent on time.
I know it's a serious subject, but I miss having a laugh. I know I would have got to know people better and had more fun if we had had the opportunity to be together face to face. More opportunities for connecting naturally through humour. I miss that.
Thank you, Devo.
Yeah, and I'm not sure we contracted sufficiently as a supervision group.
I welcome more attention to parallel processes, if and when available, for the benefit of all of our learning.
I sense our group is not feeling as comfortable to share what is not landing for us or we're not finding useful, and only share what is positive in the learning.
Me, I can't remember now.
Yeah, just keep going.
Yeah, I think virtual training is not optimal for learning systemic team coaching. I'm disappointed in this format.
Sorry, John, is there any chance you can make it a bit bigger or not? So, or just choose a few for the short-sighted ones of us to read.
Okay.
Talking of humour.
Yes. Sorry, wrong one. Wrong corner. Okay. Any help? Is that any better, Devo?
We're getting there. That's good. Yeah, I'll pick one of the big ones. Get somebody else now.
Yeah, just go when you're ready, folks.
Okay, the impact of some of the anxieties and frustration that the prolonged COVID situation has ruined or may ruin some of the hopes, plans and connections with the STC program. I would like to see some more sharing of how we, individually and as a community, deal with it, further strengthening the mutual support.
I'm worried that we as a community communicate in a way that could disengage people outside of our community, using phrases and terminology that sound mystical, new age or fluffy. This could limit our impact.
Mm-hmm.
World system has radically changed around us from when we first signed up for this course. Have we really given enough voice to that? The impact on us as individuals, our work, our teams, and our being part of this community.
I would like to hear more about the different challenges across the case studies, not just in our own supervision groups, in the interest of our own learning, but might that also bring in a bit of competition or doubt, etc.
I would like more check-ins to understand whether the teaching point, the learning point, has been grasped sufficiently. I would like to find ways we could support each other to embed learning and practice, and also for the faculty to spend more time at different points to do even more teaching.
I would like to find a way for more of us to have more active participation in the sessions and our study group.
I'd like to see stronger connection throughout the group.
I'd like to have a stronger connection with the whole group in virtual working.
We provide each other not just with knowledge and shared experience, but also with emotional support and holding, which I have found tremendously helpful.
I think it would be helpful to me if there was more attention given in the design of the breakout room membership to ensuring we interact across the whole group during a lap so that we have spent time with everyone in the group.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, everyone, for doing that. And, you know, if I can just invite the rest of the group to reflect on how does it, you know, how is it to have your statement read out? You know, what's it like to have heard it maybe for the first time being voiced in the open? So could I invite the 6 people who are with me in the room here, Davo, Tanya, Andreas, Jenny, Ian, and Deborah, to see if you can cluster these together. I appreciate there's a lot of statements here and it's quite a busy workspace, but to see if you can cluster them together and form some themes. Are there some themes, ones that go together? So maybe just for a few minutes, have an open discussion, and if it would help for me to move the post-its, I'm happy to do that.
Thanks, John.
There seemed to be a cluster around working across the wider group. So I would like to see stronger connection throughout the group. I would like to have a stronger connection with the whole group in virtual working. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you've got that. I would like to find a way for more of us to have more active participation underneath.
As part of the same one, I would like to be more connected with the whole group, not just with the small supervision group on the right side. There we go.
Yeah, and I suppose linked to that, I would like to find a way for more of us to have more active participation. There's something about hearing the quieter voices in the community that perhaps is around our participation, listening, engagement. So that's the orange sticky on the right.
This one?
Yeah, it's kind of.
So do you think that that's a different theme, Tanya, from the one on the top right, left?
Well, yeah, maybe there's something about our engagement or how we show up.
Yeah.
There's a blue sticky there, John, as well, at the top, the first blue sticky at the top.
Yeah.
I think that themes with that.
So this one, I would like to hear more. That's the one there.
That's the one.
Where would that go, Ian?
I think it's, for me, it themes with the, you know, stronger connection. Hear more about the different challenges across the groups.
Yeah, okay. Great.
And then I guess the pink one, we provide each other not just with knowledge and shared experience, but also emotional support, is almost the positive of the connection. So I don't know if that goes in that space, John, or if it's separate.
Well, can I invite maybe some of the others there to see what they think about that, Jenny?
Mm.
Yeah, for me, I'm not sure it does. It's almost contradicting some of the things that are being said. So somebody there is really experiencing something positive, and the others making those statements probably aren't feeling as positive about it.
Is it in so this speaks to me of the kind of flip side. It's almost the shadow side
Yeah.
of one, you get the other side. It's the kind of mirror image. And that's
so what do we need to do across that themed group there to get more of the pink one?
I'm not sure that I'm not sure that that's what we're being asked to do here is the solution.
Oh, okay.
Trying to theme.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at the minute, we're just trying to identify some themes that we can bring together and discuss, and we may get to some sort of a solution, but at the minute it's about grouping them together.
I think there's also a theme about sharing stories, what worked, what didn't work. So there's one about the faculty contributing with more stories. Where is that?
Well, I'm building on that, Alex. I wonder whether there's something about what we want differently, more of or less of from the faculty. There's kind of something about our relationship with the faculty.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a few. Well, I can't see them all now.
You've got documents, which the document is sent on time.
Yeah.
Go there.
Yeah, and maybe I think virtual training is not optimal, and I'm not sure faculty can do much about that at the moment, but perhaps it sits a bit there.
And there's a couple there around supervision groups as well.
Yeah.
That would form another theme.
There's one there. That one.
Yeah. So maybe the parallel processes post-it there goes up. I don't know whether that goes in faculty or whether that's kind of a group responsibility.
Okay.
But let's put it there for the moment.
John, I think there's also a kind of outside in theme about, you know, the world, how we engage with community. COVID, yeah, that kind of more systemic, if you like, theme.
John, sorry, can I just jump in to do a quick time out?
Yes.
So I'm just noticing that I feel slightly, I'm very aware that we have, of course, due to the design of this session, only hearing the voices of 6 people, and how strange it feels that we're not hearing other people at all at this point. And I guess I'm feeling that in particular because I've noticed how little group conversation there's been up to now, and how people have tended, if they have a question that they would normally ask, just to put it in chat. So I'm just very aware of those feelings currently.
Okay. Would it be useful to do something different?
The question in my mind is, is it clear when other people are brought back into the session? So maybe around process, but also, is that a feeling that other people have?
Okay.
As a member of the group, it's quite odd because I'm talking, I can only ever see 1.5 people or 3 people at the side of my screen. So I'm talking into a vacuum really, and having post-it notes moved around. So I feel disconnected in a sense because I can't pick up on the visual cues.
Yeah. I think what a suggestion or an offering from me would be, if we can complete this piece and yeah, maybe we can stop sharing the screen for a short while and let us well, pick one that we want to talk about, stop sharing the screen, and also invite others to put contributions into the chat box that the 6 people can pick up on. So that's an initial offering. How does that sound?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Will we try and finish this identifying themes exercise?
Yeah, John, I wonder if it's if it might help to connect and stay with this flow if you just say a sentence or 2 on what happens next, so people know what their involvement or participation may be next.
Yeah, well, I suppose in the first instance, it's really about surfacing these themes and giving voice to them, and then inviting the group to discuss, you know, what comes up for you when you read this. You know, what would help? What is there anything more to be said about it? What needs to happen? What are our requests? You know, so I guess the next point is about having some requests, and of whom. So we've articulated the thing that we find challenging or the thing we would like to see change. And the next point is, what would we request?
I think there's also something about not just request, but now seeing the groupings, are there things that we think that we should explore more fully with the whole group to see how people feel? And therefore, if we want to agree to do anything differently. But I'm also noticing in chat, John, it looks like people are, a couple of comments about let's do as you say, finish this and then open it up, I think is what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do that. So if I can invite the 6 people who are currently in the room to finish off this piece and try and cluster, finish the clustering exercise. And if there are a few ones that are on their own, that's absolutely fine.
John, I don't know what the others think, but that pink sticker on the right, that would go to the theme on the left for me.
Which one, this
it's
here?
About the connection. That one, yeah. It's about the connection.
Okay.
And the bottom right, I would like to have more check-ins as we go to hear and understand. That's a faculty, I think, kind of one.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be okay for faculty to be teaching even more at different times?
And another faculty one is at the top to the left. I think it'd be helpful to me if there was more attention to design of breakout rooms. Yes.
Yeah. And this one here, I think, as well.
Yeah. I think so as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got, am I right in thinking we've got 2 or 3 there in the middle that we haven't quite found a home for, or is it just the one? I would like to embrace our growth edges more.
And the one, this one here as well, I'm worried that as a community, we as a community communicates in a way that could disengage people outside of our community.
Wasn't that the one that went with the kind of extern, the outside in, the more systemic kind of global view?
Yeah.
And the bottom, that we provide each other with just enough knowledge, shared experience, but also where did we put that?
Kind of feels like it's a lovely statement, but it's a bit of a standalone. Because it's not really expressing a secret in a sense. Well, maybe it is. Maybe whoever wrote it felt that we don't acknowledge that enough. I wonder whether the embracing our growth edges goes with the quieter voices, which is something about our behavior as a learning community.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are our 1, 2, 3, 4, I suppose 5 clusters and one sort of outlying statement. So if somebody would like to maybe just summarize, you know, maybe one voice for each cluster, summarize what this cluster is saying. So maybe we can do that first.
Sorry, John, are we labeling the clusters?
Yeah, I guess summarizing, you know, so if we look at that cluster over here to the left, yeah. Do you want to take that one, Tanya?
Well, that for me is all around a connection about how do we connect beyond, how do we connect across the wider group learning community? Whether that's out of our virtual groups, supervision groups, pods, whatever it is, it's something about how do we really maximize the connections? I don't know if any of you can see my hands moving, but how do we really maximize connections across the whole network?
Okay. And if someone could summarize the one at the top of the screen.
Yeah, I can speak to that. There's something there about the world being different as compared to when we started the course, and how things have moved on in different ways for people. And the system has changed tremendously, and our responses have been diverse. And there are some concerns about, are we fully acknowledging how the world has shifted and how we're responding to that as a community, and how that impacts our course as well.
Thank you, Alex. And if someone could just summarize the one over to the right-hand side.
Give that a go. So that talks to me about how we engage with the faculty and the faculty engage with us, and we work together to be more effective in terms of our learning and using the virtual environment as well.
Thank you, Devo. And then there's one at the bottom, just at the bottom there, in the middle at the bottom, this one.
Yes, this appears to be about some perceived dissatisfaction with the way some of the supervision groups are working.
And then this bottom left.
So maybe how do we leverage the full potential of the group and the smart brains that we know are there, but we don't always hear?
Yeah.
Which may also reflect some of their frustration with the format, which may make it sometimes difficult to hear from everyone.
Yeah.
So the coffee break gatherings are not there, for example.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm suggesting is that those of us who are in the room, pick one of these, and then we'll stop sharing the screen, which we can reshare again if we need to refresh our memories. But if you pick one of these, and we'll facilitate a discussion on it. Which one would you like to start with?
Are you going to stop sharing, John?
I will once we've decided which one.
Is the discussion just us, John, or is everybody in the discussion, or are you asking us to facilitate separate discussions? Sorry, I'm not clear.
Andreas, you were making a hand signal there. What was your suggestion?
I thought that we are opening it now to the larger group, which I thought when the truth came up as one of the suggestions.
Yeah, and I think we should respond to that. So we'll once we've decided which one we talk about, we'll open it to the larger group.
I found I'm drawn to two of them. One about the connections across the whole group, and then the other, which is about us, and then the other about the wider thinking and how the world has changed as well.
Okay. Which one would you like to start with, Jenny?
Perhaps start with us.
Okay. So I'll stop sharing. Okay. Now we can see everyone. And if I can just invite everyone else to put their screens back on. And so maybe someone can kick off and suggest what needs to be discussed further on these topics and what would be helpful.
I can make a start, John. There's something coming up for me about what's within our gift and control and what's not within our gift and control.
And if you were to say, Vic, what is within our gift, what might you be saying in terms of this subject that seems to be dear to people's hearts?
Yes, we've only got a certain amount of time and energy to work on these issues. I guess it's easier to say what isn't within our gift and control. It's COVID and the way we are. So I guess the question is, how can we make this work for us, or how can we make it more satisfying?
What thoughts do people have about how to make it work for us and how to make it more satisfying?
Well, I'm curious about whether that is actually a shared experience for everyone anyway. So whether some people are getting exactly what they want and need, but that's not the case for everyone. So I think what's coming up for me is, like you would get in a group this size, people have different needs and wants. How do we manage that?
I think that's a great point, Tracy. And the other thing that occurs to me is a personal responsibility as well for reaching out. And I did write something around that. And as I was writing it, I realized, hey, come on, you could do more about this. So there's something there around what do we really want? And should we, as individuals, be reaching out? Ain't going to happen otherwise.
So there's something there, not just about a need or a request, but there's also something about an offering, Ian.
Yes, I think it's an offering, or at least an invitation to people to say, you know, would you like to participate in another group or a grouping of whatever? It may be an interest group in one of the subject matters we're talking about, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah, or it could be an opt-in. Everyone who wants to opt in, who feels like they have a need and want for more connection and feel they have some time and capacity to give to that.
I suppose I'm feeling a compression in relation to, you know, what the balance of what people might require that would satisfy as many people as possible with different learning styles or perspectives or coming from different places, and the lack of flexibility that we have in the format to ease out some of those compressions. So for me, one of the things about the open space that we did, that seemed to welcome in a kind of different set of conversations, and also the kind of sense of struggling with this format. So just beginning to recognize that we need to kind of get better at this. So I think this is the energy of this for me is all over the place. I get really excited and then a bit disconnected, and it tells me that we're doing something helpful by sticking with this. So that's my offering to build on what Ian was saying.
So
what did you mean by sticking with this? Sorry, John.
So for me, this lap has been characterized by a kind of different kind of energy. So so for me, yesterday the toot stuff we just seemed to zoom through, and then there was a kind of slowness to the using the tech, but the tech was good. And then so listening to that, I felt quite disengaged from that conversation held by the six, but I was kind of connected to the material. So I found myself not quite listening, but doing my own kind of work. Does that help clarify, Maura?
I was just going to build on that, because I think it's, you know, for me, the virtual challenge of working in connection is quite difficult. And we're such a large group. So for me, I do a lot of virtual work with smaller groups, and it's the connection. So if you had all of us as a little node and you connected everybody, actually trying to hold all that connection is near impossible, right, with this sort of large group. So I think that's why I tend to sometimes, if there's a stronger voice or whatever, I think, okay, I'm still getting some learning, but I don't need to connect. But I feel like over time, I have lost connection with the whole group. So that, but I think that's just the, you know, if you're in a room, it's a lot easier. There's 4 of you, faculty, but it's not the number of faculty involved. It's just the size of this group is too large for some of the learnings I find in a virtual setting.
Yeah.
Suzanne, I would agree with that, because just taking part in that exercise that I've just been in, I didn't think the conversation flowed in the way that it would have done if the 6 of us had been in a room around a whiteboard looking at that. It seemed to me almost like a remote statement from me, and then somebody else would give another one. Whereas I think in the room we'd be discussing how we were seeing those things. And I think that, for me, that's because we're in this virtual environment.
Can I come in?
I would slightly challenge that. Sorry. It's a really quick one. I'd really slightly challenge that, because this group this size, even face to face, for some people, I think would still feel too large for them to take their personal learning and to feel like they have enough time with some of the critical points. So I think virtual probably does amplify it or intensify it, but I know I was quite anxious about the size of this group, even if we had carried on face to face. So I'm not, yeah, I think virtual just makes it even tougher. Sorry, yapping.
No, that's fine. So I'm going to, two things come up for me. One is somehow I feel uneasiness in my tummy. I feel there is sort of almost tension or a sense of resentment. I personally don't feel that, but I feel from the energy of the Zoom room somehow. My second thing is somehow the words radical acceptance come up as people talk about, you know, we're living in this time and this is how it's meant to be or was meant to be, kind of thing. And that's not in the name of being unconstructive in terms of how could this be better, let's say for the next session or for the next cohort, but it's still, I just hold that, yeah, those two words as people talk and I listen in. So that was my share.
Radical acceptance. It's a good phrase, Yapanchak. Yeah, it was interesting comment about whether this is the best environment to learn systemically. And one thought that's occurred to me over the last number of months, it is an exact representation of what's happening systemically. Because everyone, well, apart from healthcare workers and are having this experience. I'm conscious of time. It's now 10:30 and we have another 20 minutes to our break. We've touched on, you know, we've begun to touch on the, you know, what's been happening in the world. I'm just wondering, sorry, go ahead, yes.
I think we have quite a number of people with hands up. I think it looks like 5 people, Davo, Andreas, Debbie, sorry, my screen's just shifted at that very moment, my essay, and it might have been Vic. But I think there are people who still were hoping to speak.
My feeling is that they were the original hands that were up, Moira, from the start of the discussion. So whenever I asked people to raise their hands, they hadn't been taken down.
John. Yeah, no, I took mine and put mine back up. So I'm
okay. Yes, Davo.
So couple of things that I noticed there. That one was that lovely phrase, radical acceptance, and and while I'm conscious at the moment, I might be saying something somewhat provocative in that it feels like we're at our learning edge here. For many of us, this is about the learning edge, this bit. And then the other thing that I was very conscious of was this idea that is this a great example of bumping into team versus group? And that actually, you know, while we seem to have a collective purpose around our learning and qualification and all that wonderful stuff, I'm not sure as a group of 25 odd people that we've got a common purpose. And this struck me as being a really, really very loud example for me of bumping into the difference between a group and a team, and therefore why I might be struggling with it and why others might equally be doing so. And that was just a thought, a reflection.
Yeah.
And Deb, do you still have your hand up?
Deb.
I was thinking about it. It's been up, down, up, down, up, down. I'm just going to say it. I think that I agree with what you said, Davo. We are a group. And that's okay, that's what we are. I feel that if we were all together, there'd be little subgroups, there'd be huddles, having a coffee and a conversation about one thing and another few people having a conversation about something else, and some people would not be talking about this at all. They'd be talking about the football or having a laugh, and all of those extracurricular conversations help us bond and become more of a team. We know that. I'm noticing it this morning. I'm really struggling. I was even one of the 6, and I didn't actually behave like one of the 6. I couldn't bring myself to jump in and get involved with the post-it notes. And then I realised I probably should. And I'm feeling the disconnection today. And I don't want to, but I am, and I think it's all okay. It is what it is. And our teams that we're working with are feeling the same way. I have lots of people talk to me about how much they miss just bumping into people and having those easy conversations. And so that's, I don't know whether that's helpful, but it is what it is. And that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, someone mentioned about, you know, parallel process and on one of the post-it notes, and there are lots of parallels in what we're experiencing here in our learning community and what you are experiencing as you work with your teams. You know, there's lots of things happening in those dynamics that are also happening here. You know, not knowing what to do, feeling disconnected. How do you facilitate a conversation with 20, 25 people on your computer screen? You know, that's meaningful and helpful. Sorry, Deborah.
It's very formal as well. It's, you know, this way it feels more formal even. You know, as if I've got to have something right to say.
Yeah.
When I'm on a video screen than it would be if we were in the room in Bonham Street.
And thank you, Deborah, for sharing that.
I was struck again, as you were talking, Deb, about this notion of, somebody mentioned it earlier, what we can and can't control for ourselves. And also that sort of, I don't know, picking up on, I think, feelings of a sort of disappointment, maybe even resignation. I don't know.
I noticed, can I say something?
Yep.
I noticed that when Davo and Deb were speaking in the beginning, I really felt like, yeah, you know, let's get on with it. And of course we can have a negative view on some kind of things, but let's see what is possible. And then when you were just speaking your last words, Deb, suddenly it struck me, but I really felt emotional. I almost wanted to cry, just about the feeling, yeah, somehow acknowledging what we do miss out. Yeah.
And I suppose this starts to link, doesn't it, or speak to the second set, which is about the world around us and what's shifting. And of course, when we first signed up, we didn't sign up to go online and do an online course. We didn't sign up to all be sat at home to have COVID, etc., etc. So for me, there's something about the connection between our personal experience in the here and now and that second theme around, yeah, out there-ness.
Yeah. So a question that's, sorry.
John, may I just say something? I feel there's a kind of a seesaw going on in my mind. And yet there's also, am I right in thinking that if we had just done it face to face, we would have been done and dusted, you know, finished off by last October? And actually, I have found that I've welcomed the ongoingness of it, because I feel from a learning perspective, I have actually had experience of learning in a different way, which I haven't always enjoyed, but I can see that we have to do it because that's where things are at the moment. So it's kind of that's the plus side as well, the length of time that we're going to be together. So then the question is, how else can we use it to encompass the different needs and wants of others? That's all.
Thank you, Harriet. Andreas?
Yes, and I think And I think as has already been meant or posted in the chat, what we're going through is, I think it informs us a lot about what our teams are going through, our clients are going through. So what's missing? I mean, that all resonates now with us so much that we understand also how our teams need to feel, or our clients need to feel, or the clients that we don't have right now because of COVID. And so we have some of the frustration here. But I think it can also inform us about the challenges that some of the leaders do have in engaging with their teams, being forced to do this. So some of the clients that you probably all have, they need to lead at a distance. And how do I do this? And how do we all get irritated by this? So I see this actually as a benefit of this course, that we are all thrown into this. And I mean, as I also do a little bit of teaching, I mean, when I look like this, right, or I look like this, or I look like this, I always look at you because I have 3 large screens here so that I'm able to see every one of you. I think this is also a development in our team coaching development, that I learned that I need this equipment to work with a team sufficiently so that I see the team, that I see the Miro board, that I see the speaker, and have the opportunity to be engaged with them and not clicking at the screens. Where is my screen now? And do I like it? No, I don't like to have my room stuffed with all the big screens, but I feel it's necessary. So now I stop talking because we don't hear the other silent voices otherwise.
Yeah, can I just build on that? I'm noticing that I'm feeling a tension around, and I think this is a parallel process again, so it's a question actually to the group, is a tension between wanting to step back and have the conversation around so what for an activity when we are doing it with a team. You know, where would we go next? Would you do what you've just done with us and let us talk for longer? When actually, if I'm feeling a tension around, I really want to step out of the process now and think about how I might facilitate the process well and with impact with a team, but versus knowing this is a really, really important conversation, and part of our role is to help a team slow down sometimes and have this kind of conversation. But actually, have we drifted so far away from what was on the post-its as well? It's just all of that busyness is in my head, and I'm imagining being with real teams in front of us where they're going, so why are we going further into this? How does this link to the original activity? Blah blah blah. So
yeah. And maybe Moira will pick up on that a little bit in the few minutes that we have before our break. I'm just conscious of leaving, loose ends and open loops as well. And I'm wondering, is there anything that was put on the board that we haven't paid attention to that needs to be named or needs to be noticed and brought to our attention?
Well, I guess, what are we going to do about the things on the board? Are we doing anything, or are we just saying it and then it just goes off into the ether?
It's a good challenge, Deborah. It's a good challenge. And there are many things on the board, and to agree a whole set of actions now in the next 10 minutes would be quite challenging.
What's going on for me, and this is part, I think, being in the dance of this, and part being on the balcony of when we're doing this type of conversation. What's going on for me is, or what's coming up for me, so this isn't going to be particularly coherent or or suggestive, but there's something about what needs to be acknowledged, and giving it real acknowledgement, not just kind of mentioning it. And then there's something about what needs to happen with it. And Moira talked about control and not control, but it's also like what can be influenced and who wants to influence what. And there's something here about this. You can stand back and look at, there's a lot of sameness that you hear across the group, and there's a lot of differences as well. And I'm wondering how how that provides the energy for an acknowledgement and a letting go piece.
And sorry, Chris, I missed the back end of what you said because my internet is a bit up and down today, but I think I'm talking partly to Tracy and partly to Deb. I think it's always a judgment call in moments like these in terms of where you might go. But my own personal intuition a few minutes ago was just to sit with this and acknowledge the different feelings that came up and to see what might emerge. And then just in the way that Deb said, well, what are we going to do about this? That sort of thing might happen. So for me, there's something about always checking out. You know, if I'm feeling we might sit with this, how do I check out whether that's where people are, what they want to do? So it's always a judgment call about when to sit and when to maybe try and move, and looking for cues in the group as well, or in the team. And I noticed when I said sit with this, I think I saw a couple of nods, but I'm not sure.
And if we have specific requests, you know, that would make a difference for us, make them either of the whole group, of the faculty, of your supervision group, or of specific people. If you have specific offerings to make, you know, going back to what Ian said at the start, if you have an offering to make, then make it to individuals or to your supervision group or to the whole group. And then the responsibility is on the rest of us to respond. And also as the faculty to respond to things that have been put there. So what response is required from us? We need to take that on board and decide what to do with it.
Can I do a timeout? And I have to confess, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to say, but there's something about, for me, a tension between maybe a responsibility that faculty feel for creating a structure and a focused program, and on the one hand, and we have an agenda and stuff that we plan to get going, carry on with for the rest of the morning. And on the other hand, there's a huge opening up here of how-tos. And when the group of 6 summarized the 6 bullet points, there were lots of how do we connect more? How do we bring the outside in more? How do we engage with the faculty more? And so I suppose I'm finding myself wondering, what is the scope for openness here? What are we prepared for? Is there a question as a faculty that we would disband the rest of the morning to focus on this? It opens it up for me, and I don't know. I don't know whether that helps John or Moira or not, but it feels like it's in the room. What scope is there for us adapting, engaging more, helping others to develop their learning more, staying with this, sitting with this, Moira?
Yeah, it's a good challenge. I don't really know. So I suppose there's always a continuum of, those who appreciate structure and like to, the relief of a structure in order to learn. And then there's also a need to spend time exploring and being more emergent in what we do. That's always a choice as well when we work with teams.
I was talking at the first bit about the sense of compression that I felt, and I feel that this is opened out. So I was just thinking then, Hilary, while you were talking, and John, you responded about the Otto Scharmer quote that you talked about opening the boundary. So my sense of sitting with this is that we're opening the boundary of what we need to deal with, and all of us aren't really sure about what that kind of means. It's thrown our, the external world kind of throws me around what is it I need from this course. So I really like what Harriet had to say about the length of the course and the connection to the supervision group over time. And there's something for me about the disconnect of this experience that none of us want to kind of create, but just seems to happen because of the compression of the digital space that we've talked about. So, you know, can we try and experiment some ways with doing that again give people a sense of structure, but also invite maybe more things in? I don't know, just offering that.
Thanks, Brian.
So I've got three things going on. Hilary, your toot, I don't know why, but I felt a sense of relief after hearing your toot, and I'm not sure what that was about for me, but it might have been about an acknowledgement of the tension. I'm also noticing things in chat bar about we've got loads of data, what do we want to do with it? Or do we want to sit with this? Do we want to go back to the Jamboard? And I'm also very aware that we might want to break and to pick up again, but I don't want to take us away from where we are right now. So that's another tension.
I wonder whether Dave's comments has stayed in me about, is this our learning edge? Are we really experiencing our learning edge right now? And as an option, because this is such a big group and because there's such an overwhelming theme around connection, could one thing be we go into our supervision groups, but we continue the conversation with our supervisor, with the stuff that's come out from everyone? That feels like I'm just talking from my perspective, that feels like a safer container where actually we might be able to get to some resolution for people, possibly.
I mean, if I can offer, I think we definitely need to take a break. As people are saying in the chat bar, people need loo breaks and all sorts. And I think also with this topic, you know, we don't lose anything by having a break and having the option to come back to it afterwards. In fact, with the opportunity to reflect, we can regroup when we get back. We could even do a little poll of what people would prefer to do. And not everyone, you know, and maybe we don't all do the same thing. I don't know, but you know, having a break doesn't stop us from coming back to this and deciding as a group what we want to do with the rest of the session afterwards.
So it's 10:50. John, what do we want to say? 15 minutes?
Yeah, I think 15 minutes would be good. And maybe if the faculty could come back slightly early and just have a little, you know, discussion about setting up the next moment.
Sure.
Is 5 minutes enough for us?
Can we on WhatsApp? Then it's just easier to walk around.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great. So back at 5 past, so we say 5 past 11.
Go and look out of the window, folks, if you have one.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your participation so far.
Can we make it 10 minutes? Because I find 5 minutes isn't enough to have a water out tea in.
Oh, no, it's 15 minutes.
15.
Oh, I thought you said 5. In that case,
no, I said 5 past.
Down to 10. So
5 past. 5 past.
A luxurious 15 minutes. Think what you do with that, Chris.
us know by turning your camera on. And Julia, I'm assuming you're there. I know you probably won't want your camera on at the minute.
Sorry, I am here, but I'm chewing.
Lucky you.
That's fine. That's fine.
And Moira said in the chat box she's just had to step away to attend to something at the moment.
Okay. So, so folks, as you've probably imagined, we've had a whistle-stop conversation just now in the break. And as you'll know, we had intended to go on to run a session about another process which helps to really identify patterns in teams and how to very overtly bring up the subject of helpful and unhelpful behaviours. But in service of the previous conversation, we have a slightly different suggestion for you. I'm going to share my screen with you. And the thinking that we just very quickly did over the break was that we thought we might create some space to continue the conversation in groups. Let me come back to the supervision groups or BOGs in a minute, but the purpose would be to continue some of the conversation that was raised by that secrets exercise, whether that's about how we might connect more broadly or what's needed, and or if you've got any particular asks of faculty, because those seem to be the two areas that had the most post-its, the faculty relationship, interaction, partnering, and the connecting. So the idea is to have 40 minutes to have that conversation, and that we would ask you as a group to come back with both an offer and a request to faculty or the whole group which honour the issues raised. We've got two question marks about that. One is the supervision groups are set up and ready to go. Of course, we can abandon that. We noticed in the chat bar there were a couple of comments about would it be nice to do something in mixed groups that weren't supervision groups after the break. So we could do mixed groups. Of course, if we do that, they'll be totally random. In service of time, we just open random breakouts. And of course, there's a question about whether you would want faculty to join you. But that's the proposal. I'm going to stop sharing. How's that sounding, folks? First off, as a proposal in terms of continuing the conversation, do you want to give me a thumbs up reaction if that's something that you think would be useful to do? Okay, I'm not seeing that many. I'm not seeing that many votes for continuing the conversation.
I'm seeing Vic saying if we can do it in supervision groups.
Okay. So does that alter anything, folks? If we were to continue that conversation in supervision groups, could you give me a thumbs up if you think that's a good idea? Okay. Okay. So I don't know if other faculty are any better than counting at me. I think we've got a few more votes for supervision groups.
Yes. I wonder if we should also ask people to indicate if they feel they're done with the topic and would rather move on to the agenda originally set and do the new input.
Okay, so if you would prefer to stick with the agenda, which will now be a bit squished, but we can still do it. Okay. I think there's a preference for moving on with the planned agenda.
Moira, there may be an unexpressed question around if we don't do the agenda this morning, what happens to the content? I mean, I guess we will find a way of putting it into the March programme.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the other thought is we actually haven't spent any time yet talking about how you might use the secrets exercise with teams. So I just, that's another thing we probably do need to put in at some point.
I like the idea of closure on the last activity, Hilary.
Okay. So if we were to do the closure on the last activity and to assure you that you won't be missing out on the talk content, we can cover that in March. Who then would like to continue the conversation? I feel like going around. Okay, I think we want to close down secrets and carry on with red and green is the impression I'm getting. Can I see a show of hands for closing down secrets and doing red and green? Okay.
That's a majority.
Moira, can I ask a question?
Sure, sure.
Are we going to have any time in our supervision group today?
That is planned. It will be quite short now because of the slight overrun, but the red and green does take us into supervision groups, yes.
And so I'm wondering, as a potential other option, whether some of what your content you're covering, faculty could do it with the supervision group, because then we could sort of apply it to our supervision group and help us. I don't know if that's an option.
That's exactly what's planned, Tracy.
Ah, okay, cool.
That very elegant segue.
Good suggestion, Tracy.
Love it, love it. Okay, so John, let's go back and finish off secrets, shall we?
Yeah.
And then move on to red and green. Okay, folks, so I'm now going to have to find where I was in the deck, because of course I've rushed to cobble together this slide in the break. Okay. Okay, so John, chip in by all means, John. So if we were applying this in teams, so sorry, there was a question raised by, I think it was Tanya, about how would you do this face to face. So I've answered that in chat bar, but just to be clear, normally we would be sat in a circle. We would give everybody a post-it and the same coloured pen. The idea is that you shouldn't be able to identify who's written what. You'd give them the time, as John gave you, to think about and write the comment, and you'd invite them to so I'm going to stop sharing just for 1 minute here, to fold the post-it in a very particular way. So I'll just show you that because you can see me. So we ask them to write it on the sticky side and then to actually fold it stuck together like that and put it into a pot, a box, a container. The idea being that it's not easy to make out anybody's because it's folded differently or whatever. We then invite people to take a post-it each, take a minute to digest it, and then, as indeed you were invited to on screen today, to read it out as if it were their own. And then the other variation that I sometimes do, rather than the clustering, because that was easier on screen, I would ask one person to read something out, and they might say, we wish for more connection. I might then say, particularly in a smaller group, does anybody else have anything similar? So what you then get is, if there are other post-its that are similar, you get all of that at the same time. So I go through that process to make sure the issues are out. You understand where the bigger hitters are, if you like, in terms of numbers, and then start to explore, what do we want to do with this? What conversation do we need to have? Let's explore, let's invite people to discuss the subject. You might even ask if anybody's willing to give specific examples, maybe, as long as it's not naming an individual, and then to explore what they might do differently. So that's the process in terms of applying this in teams. I mean, we've just put together a few little helpful tips here, really. There is something about being aware of the phase of team life. So something about the degree of safety and to what extent people are likely to come forward. The other thing that people often say is, how do you know when to use secrets? How do you know when to do this? So clearly, if you're coaching individuals, I think one of you mentioned a time when somebody kept going to the manager and talking about the rest of the team. So clearly, if you're doing individual coaching, you might notice patterns of people bringing things in that aren't being expressed in the team. I would still encourage those individuals and support them in expressing in the team, but that might be a cue for you. I worked with a team in the NHS a couple of years ago where they continually raise phrases like the hot topics, the hot issues, or dancing around our handbags. And it didn't matter how many times I said things like, well, you all appear to know what those are, and I don't. It took the secrets activity to enable them to talk about the stuff that was really bothering them. But you'll get cues. I sometimes also like to head it up with the use of the iceberg diagram. So talking about the fact that there's the visible stuff you see on the surface, the way people speak, the behaviors and so on. And then there's the stuff under the surface, the dynamic, the unspoken, the subgroups and so on, that if not attended to can get in the way of the task. So being aware of phase of team life, ensuring that the team are really clear about this is not about individuals. So really good contracting here up front. And as we hopefully have shown today a little bit, don't rush it. You know, take the time it feels the team need to process. I think on the slide you've got, I've said prompt commitments where appropriate. That was a bit of a hammy way of saying explore the need for change. You know, explore what's the discussion or the conversation that we need to have. So I'm going to stop sharing just for a moment, but I am aware of time. So John, did you want to come in and bring up the rear in any way, or do we have any other questions about application? And I haven't been watching the chat bar either.
Well, it was just to say, I briefly alluded earlier on to using this with a team about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was a team with limited budget and a bit of a crisis situation, not too much time to spend or money to spend, and a real need to get something addressed quickly in a short period of time. And basically our middle session, so we did 3 team coaching sessions with them, and the middle session consisted of doing this exercise with them. And it worked very well because contracting, we spent the first session contracting, and and before that I spent a lot of time with the team leader, making sure that he was showing real leadership in the situation, was gaining commitment from the team before we did anything as to their willingness to engage in it and to move towards an outcome, all members of the team. And in this situation, it was to do with difficulties in relationships, particularly centered around one member of the team. It enabled them to have an open conversation and to say openly, this is what we're experiencing. We want it to change. And then we spent the last session basically putting the levers in place that would enable the change, involving some changes in roles and responsibilities, changes in communication and so on. So I would say the contracting piece and the preparation work and the stage at which you do something like this is really important. Couple of questions. Tracy, experience of using stakeholder connections team to team. Have you ever done it as a transparent exercise? How to manage potential crossover from voicing? Tracy, do you want to just briefly re-ask it?
Is it not clear, John? No, they're the 3 questions going.
Better coming from you, I think.
Okay, just 3 questions going through my head is the value of doing it transparently and it becoming a bit of a truth-telling exercise. I understand that might be phase and maturity of the team, but I would be curious to know whether you've started off anonymously and at some point in the later in the work you've done it transparently and how that went.
Yeah, can I answer that one?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
So I'm in my memory here. So it was transparent. It became transparent, and part of the contracting was around finding a way to speak their truth in a constructive way and in a restorative way and in a way that honored the other people. So that was part of the preparatory work, and the team leader actually did quite a bit of that in advance. And it was a case of the team talking to a member of the team and saying, this is our experience of working with you, is like, this is how it impacts on us. It was actually, I'm starting to feel a bit emotional because I'm remembering what was going on, that the team member who was letting his other team members down had a lot of stuff going on a personal level that he hadn't told them about. And whenever he began to disclose it, the dynamic changed and the expectations changed. But there was a lot of preparatory work done on how they were going to voice it. Was there another question there, Tracy?
Afraid so, yeah. I think also Tanya's comment below kind of touches on that. Sometimes it feels, even in some of our messages today, implicit in there is some feedback we want to voice or give. I'm not saying necessarily specifically to individual people, because you made it clear this is not about individuals, but I think sometimes that dynamic's at play. So I am curious around how that's managed, or how explicit you are around we're kind of crossing into territory that sounds like feedback versus voicing patterns, or that stays at the collective level.
I suppose my view would be that it would be aspirational for all teams to be able to speak the truth to each other in a way that's constructive and helpful and, invitational and non-judgmental. And, I've been a member of many teams and still am. And in situations, being able to say to another team member, whenever you do that, this is how it impacts on me. And I would like to ask you to think about doing it differently. Could we have that conversation? So I think it is entirely reasonable to expect people to speak openly to each other. I think that's where we need to get to in teams.
I think also I've had experience of running it where once all of the comments are out and they're starting to explore, people then, I have had experience of people saying, well, it was me who said that. Once they feel more comfortable getting into the conversation. So I've had people just own the comments that they have made during the exploratory conversation as well, which has been.
If you've got a smaller intact team of like 7 people, then do you have then 7 of them read but don't read your own, pick someone else's, or do you still pick a smaller proportion to read them all, like 2 or 3 from the team, or how would you set that up?
So in that size, I would have each person read but don't read your own. So they would usually open, and if they've picked their own, they put it back in.
John and Moira, can I just make a little share a thought? And that's that, of course, we're not saying that this is necessarily the first port of call in any interpersonal strife or conflict. And if we think about our 5 disciplines then and our systemic perspective, we would be expecting that a lot of the conflict within the team will arise from the system, different goals, roles, tensions, etc. So through the commissioning and clarifying work, hopefully some of the tensions that is played out interpersonally have already been addressed in part and dissipated. So so this is something that we use down the line. That's all I wanted to say.
Saying that, this kind of conversation about what I've always called elephants, right, and doing elephant safari, can often come quite early, particularly if you do like an inquiry, the TC360 team are then making sense of what's happening. That often triggers a conversation around where some of the elephants start to surface that the team realize they need to kind of deal with.
Yeah, true. I was partly reacting to Tanya's question around if it's all around one person. I think my view is if it's all around one person, there's probably something that they're voicing from the system that isn't being heard yet. So we probably would, you know, we bring the outside in first, but yeah, I accept that some of this stuff does sometimes comes early, but within the context of the other disciplines.
Yeah, no, to come on the back of that, Hilary, I did the, is it the role contribution exercise? Something where they kind of start talking about roles and that kind of, yeah, conversation about what I can offer and requests and things. And that had been really helpful.
Yeah, great, thanks.
But the theme of what isn't being said feels like such a big, significant underlying issue in a system often, to Harriet's point around truth to power as well. So building on what Chris said, even if you're talking around the commissioning space or the clarifying space, often it's the stuff that's not getting said or doesn't get said that's actually not helping you be as effective in those areas as well. So it just feels like such a big thing that's holds organizations, leadership and teams back. So this exercise is very inside the team, but how do you bring in a more systemic influence and voice and the whole truth to power stuff and hearing different voices? That was just a stream of consciousness, sorry, as I was trying to think out loud. Not very helpful.
I think that's often partly in the exploring conversation about you know, what people are feeling and experiencing and where that might be coming from. So I'm working with a team at the moment, and to Chris's point about the elephant in the room has come in really early, but it's not about the team functioning or individuals. It's the fact that they've got to save 10% of their budget, and they're all very concerned about their jobs. So they've already started to look out and think about how they might be able to either A, get information, or B, influence the wider system or connect with stakeholders to find out where they are. So I think it depends on sometimes that exploratory conversation and what comes up.
As part of the co-creating discipline, I know that this isn't so much focused on interpersonal stuff, what we're doing here, but do you cover team feedback and courageous conversations and those kind of things in this program? Or
is your question, Chris, is in this program?
Yeah.
No, not courageous. We don't cover that sort of material, but I'm sure there's stuff on the reading list that you would be able to find. We're going on now. We are going on to talk about having a conversation about behaviours that help and hinder. So, folks, shall we move on to that and see where we get to? Because there is time in supervision groups in that that next piece as well.
Just Moira and John, I just wanted to flag a question really about the use of the chat during this exercise, and it seems to me, having been outside of this process, there's I think there's an interesting thing to consider about whether when you're doing this type of exercise it helps to have the chat, if you're doing it online obviously, or whether that's a distraction, and how you contract with the team around that. I don't know whether that's a discussion point, but I think it's something to consider.
So personally, I don't find it a distraction because I don't really look at it whenever I'm sort of holding the space. And it could be, so it's another conversation that's going on. So there's the conversation in the room, there's the conversation in the chat. When you look back at it, there is a lot of really great stuff in the chat. So maybe it's it's a way of capturing memory, as we go through. But personally, I don't find it particularly distracting myself.
I think I've got two responses to that. Today, I found it distracting because I've been trying to keep on top of it and doing a very good job. But if I were working with a team, I wouldn't want them to be having separate conversations in chat that weren't in the room. unless it was, oh, can you post that idea or that thought, or can you send me a reminder or something? But I wouldn't want them to be having a separate conversation in chat during a session that I was working when I were working with them. So folks, how does it feel like in terms of moving on? Shall we move on to talk about red and green? Okay. So let me just make sure I've got the right slides here. Okay. So the activity that we are going to describe and use in supervision groups, we tend to term, we talk about it in terms of red and green, or red and green cards, or red and green behaviours. And the purpose really is for the team to collectively agree the behaviours that are going to contribute most to success. So it's about really helping the team explore the dynamic and to talk about and identify the behaviours that might be getting in the way for them and the behaviours that are helpful. So think about best and worst, or helps and hinders. That's all very well. That's a conversation that I find most teams engage with quite enthusiastically, but that's not really job done. We also need to be thinking about, as well as defining red and green behaviours, how do we help the team establish some sort of process by which it will live the behaviour? So how do they hold themselves accountable when we're no longer around? So as well as helping them think about when they're at their best and worst, and the sort of behavioural patterns that they can get into and how they might sustain or interrupt those patterns, it's also about prompting them to think about a process for how they'll hold themselves accountable. Whether that's literally flagging to one another red and green behaviours during meetings, or whether it's embedding a review at the end of every meeting to say what's helped, what's hindered, what have we noticed about our patterns, what have we committed to do and done well, and what haven't we. But it's about embedding some sort of process. And also it's about providing us as a coach with a set of behaviours against we can help the team review, whether it's working off-site or in business as usual meetings. So I'm going to describe the process to you first of all, and then I'll talk through a specific example. So the process is to simply ask the team to think about, you know, when we're at our best or on a good day, what does it feel like? So it's reflecting on the experience of working together and thinking about what behaviours do we see when we're doing really well, when we feel we're at our best. And we'd ask them to write post-its for both the positive and the negative, one behaviour per post-it. So what do we like at our best, and what do we like when we're at our worst? And we invite the team to actually put the post-its on 2 flip charts, or flip charts split down the middle with left and right, or 2 different boards, one best and one worst. So it's about constructing the best and worst first of all. Step 2 of that process is then to get people to think about a sort of cycle of behaviour, if you like. We call it a causal loop diagram, but often there's a cycle of behaviour for their best and worst patterns, and I'll show you an example in a moment. And we then ask the group to think about, when we're at our best, how can we enable more of that? How can we sustain that? How do we do more? And when we're in a worst or a red cycle, are there things that we can do to interrupt that negative cycle? And we use those interrupts to agree the red and green behaviours. So let me just talk you through this quickly, and then we'll go on to supervision groups to have a go. So I worked with a team, it's about 2 years ago. They were a team in the hospitality business. I'm going to remind myself to call the manager Eddie, just because that isn't his name. But for confidentiality purposes, the team leader was called Eddie. I'm going to come back to him at some point. And I invited the team. This was quite a young team, really enthusiastic team, really likable team. And when we talked about them at their best, they were very enthusiastic about the activity. And what came out was, we absolutely love what we do. We've got a really clear shared purpose. We're really motivated to achieve. We're absolutely passionate about customers. Not only that, they were well connected to customers. They seemed to really have their finger on the pulse in terms of external stakeholders. They were all quite big, or they like to think they were all quite big picture thinkers. There were no passengers. They all worked really, really hard. And as such, there was no shortage of ideas in the team. The team were overflowing with ideas about how to improve customer service, new products, new ways of working. They liked each other. They went to the pub quite regularly. They held events where they brought customers in to see their products and services. So they had a lot of fun, and they did get stuff done. And what they said was, when we're good, we're really, really good. But a bit like the little girl with the little curl, when we're good, we're really, really good. And when we're bad, we're horrid. And they had good relationships with their investors. So they engaged very easily in this activity and enjoyed it. But at the worst, when asked what they did, they said, we've just got too much going on. We're running from A to B. The diary's full of meetings. We're doing things on the hoof all the blooming time. Nothing is ever planned properly. We focus on doing stuff rather than delivery or outcomes. And we really do need to be much clearer about the ask, the task, and the timelines. They admitted sometimes that they did unpick decisions that had been made. They go back over old ground time and time again, unpicking. And they often would vie for Eddie's attention or for the attention of the investors. So they loved presenting to the board. They loved schmoozing with investors and so on. So there was a way in which they were quite competitive. There was only one woman in the group. And often there was a lot of competition and talking over her as well, which they kind of noticed. So they were really competitive. They didn't share leads and connections, so they didn't share people in their black book or leads. They ran with a lot of their own things from time to time. And they didn't really address failure. They didn't call things out when things didn't get done. But what they were very good at was throwing in effort, thinking this is a good idea, running with an idea without thinking if it was really feasible, without any process like doing a business case or whatever. So they would often run with their own pet ideas. So step one is in supervision groups for you to reflect on, what is it like to be part of this supervision groups? Along the way, you've talked about highs and lows, and indeed today you've addressed, have we really contracted properly? Do we get enough? Are we envious of other groups, and so on? So using the Jamboard, and John, I'm going to trust you to set up the link here again, or we might use whiteboards, I'm guessing, in the breakouts actually. If you could put the Jamboard link in. We're going to ask you to just brainstorm the behaviours you experience when this supervision group is at its best. And equally, what do you see and experience when you know you're not doing so well, when you're at your worst? Bearing in mind the work we did on Toots yesterday, we're also going to invite one person in the group to stand back and do some timeouts. So the idea is that we're going into breakouts for approximately 12 minutes or so. We're going to ask one person to toot. Hilary, I think you're setting up the breakouts. Would I be right?
Yeah, sorry.
You're on mute, Hilary.
I won't press go until I'm sure that everyone's got that link, because we need the link.
So just to explain about the link, it's the same link as I shared before, but if you go to the top of the screen and scroll across, it opens up different boards, and you'll see the supervision group name at the top of the board. So the first two are for saplings, the next two are for wild horses, and so on. So just scroll through until you reach your own whiteboard.
So we don't need the link again if we still got it in our browser, is that right?
Well, it's there anyway. I popped it in again anyway, just to save you scrolling back.
Brilliant, thank you.
Okay.
And I think I'm right in saying, faculty, we're joining the supervision groups.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. So we're seeing supervision groups, folks, and we'll be going till 55.
Right, ready to go?
Yep.
Claire, are you there? Deborah, Chris?
There's always a horrible moment when you come back in and you're alone thinking, have I actually come back into my room, or am I in cyberspace somewhere? Never to be seen again.
We're with you, Maura.
Like our first
We've
training
written
session
about
years
these
ago.
new neuroses that we've developed.
Yeah, it's a whole new set of things, isn't it? Yeah, whole new set of paranoias to worry about. Okay, so I'm going to move us on quite quickly to the next stage of that that activity now. Let me just go back. Jessica, Tracy, I can see you. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. Great, thank you very much. So, so that's what you've just done, folks. You've let's assume you've worked with a team. You've done this in supervision groups to brainstorm the behaviours that you see or experience when the team feel they're doing well, when they feel they're working at the best, and the things that are getting in the way. And we then move on to trying to look at the relationship between those different behaviours, because often one thing builds another, builds another. So I'm going to show you an example of a causal loop from this particular team that I've described to you. It's not a particularly polished slide, I'll say, but hopefully you'll get a picture from that. So I'm going to start on the right. So working with this team and thinking about, help me understand how this plays out. What are the patterns? You've told me what you're like when you're at the best, but what are the patterns and connections? How do you get into this sort of cycle? So with this team, in looking at their causal loop, what we saw was they were really, really energized by this notion of shared purpose. They were well connected and they were clear about their purpose. They were big picture thinkers. They were full of ideas, really passionate about customers, no shortage of ideas. But here down on the right, what you see here is all too often they would be running with a pet idea. So individuals would go to Eddie and say, I've got a great idea. Eddie wouldn't necessarily think to ask them to share that with others. So they would run with an idea. And you can see the link, the blue line there over, that takes us over to the worst cycle, which meant ultimately for them, they had too much on. So for them, there was this real notion of purpose, seeing the big picture, passion, lots of ideas. They all work hard to bring these ideas to life. They like each other. They do know what good looks like. They get stuff done and they can be really good. But one of the outcomes of all of that energy, enthusiasm, and ideas were that many of them ran with their own pet idea, didn't think to share that with others, but neither did they take a planned approach to anything that they were doing. So they didn't go through a process of looking at the feasibility of an idea, having to think about a business case. There were many, many projects that have been started but not finished. So if we then look at the left-hand side, at their worst, they would say, we just got so much on. You know, we're really, really unclear. We know our shared purpose. We know where we want to be, but we're really unclear. We're not nailing. So what are our goals and what are the tasks and activities that underpin them? So again, there's a link there between having a shared purpose, but then sharing that purpose, but not nailing that in terms of the clarity. What does that actually mean in terms of our strategy, our goals, our roles, our deliverables, and so on? So they had too much on. They weren't clear, but boy, would they get behind things and throw effort in. Yeah, it would be great if we could do this or that for customers. They'd get behind things and they'd all feel incredibly burned out because they were putting in a lot of effort, often spinning their wheels and not doing things. As I said earlier, they ran a lot with their own ideas. They didn't always share what they should, but they would vie for attention with Eddie. They would often vie for attention with Eddie, and they were also, they were really, really, in some ways, a really confident, quite young bunch who loved promoting the brand. They loved talking to customers. They loved presenting to the board. So they were often vying for attention, like, it's my turn. No, it's my turn. No, I want to be there this week talking to investors about my idea. And hence there were too many things going on. And often they would unpick decisions that had been made. So we made a decision to look at this product, and now we don't think that's such a good idea. Or we made a decision to move in this direction in this market, and now we're less clear. So they had this sort of pattern of running to Eddie and trying to get him on side and didn't call each other out on that. Let's just think, sorry, I'm going to go back just for a moment. I said I was going to come back to Eddie. The one thing about him in all of the work that we did together was that he was really, really complicit in this. He actually did encourage and reinforce some of the competition, because his belief was if you have healthy competition, you get all of the best ideas and the best possible outcome. So I'm hoping that that diagram makes sense to you. Tracy and Jessica, I can see you. Give me a thumbs up if you kind of understand the idea. Putting together a loop of behaviour. Tanya, thank you, I can see you.
Maura, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So if you go back a slide, why, please, why and how is the run with our own pet idea managed to kind of float over there? Because it's purple, and I get that's the, so is this the...
What it meant was they just ended up with too much on. So they'd have a plan for the team to deliver, but then Marcus or Sam or whoever would say, oh, we could do this, or we could do this. And they'd go to Eddie and he'd say, yeah, put that on the list of things. And they just ended up having too much on.
I get that. Sorry, it's more of a process thing. Is this a, because it seems to me that sits on at our worst rather than at our best. And so
this is a sort of consequence of the best in some way. So sorry, the run with their own pet idea to a certain extent was a consequence of what they thought they were like at their best.
Right.
The consequence of us being passionate and having no shortage of ideas is too often, because we've got no shortage, we go off and run with them, and then we have too much on, and we only discover after the fact. So there's also often a consequence to them at their best. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what I'm going to ask you to do now, and I'm going to just check with Hilary again about the bogs.
Yeah.
Okay. So going back to your, whether you used Jamboard or the whiteboard, if we go back to the supervision, actually, no, sorry. Let's move on.
Yeah, you need to do that.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a couple ahead of myself, aren't I? Okay. So sorry, the question then becomes, what behaviours take you out of your best cycle? So Davo, that hopefully I've answered that question. What are the things that sometimes can spill over? They appear to be best, but they take you out of. And what behaviours do you need to use to interrupt your worst? What might be the green card behaviours which would interrupt? So if I just show you the causal loop slide again, in asking them about, so what are the behaviours that get in the way and what are the behaviours that could help interrupt the worst cycle? Again, it's not a particularly polished diagram here, but you can see some things here. In terms of the no shortage of ideas, one of the behaviours was that took them out of their best was there was this competing for influence, particularly with Eddie and particularly with investors. The no shortage of ideas they described as being at their best, but actually the flip side of that was often they would ignore the detail of how we implement an idea. You know, it's great, let's run with it, let's throw some energy behind it, but they didn't have real clarity about what does good look like and how might we take a planned approach? How might we deliver on this idea? Is it feasible? Is it doable? Do we want to put resource behind it? Will we invest in it? Do we believe that it's something that customers want? And in their getting along, they would often smooth over any conflict. They'd talk about one another to Eddie, but they would smooth over any conflict. So sometimes it would bubble up in meetings and then be suppressed. And often it was particularly between two people. And I've put here, they said they got stuff done, but there was a question mark about you get stuff done or not. They didn't stop to address failure or to address the many projects that had fallen by the wayside, the many things started but not finished. So those were some of the things that were happening there. And then in terms of what might be the green card behaviours, the things that would interrupt this negative cycle. So if we have too much on, we've got too many ideas, how do we really slow down and we get clarity about these individual ideas and take a planned approach, whether that's a feasibility, business case, project management, but how do we really slow down and get some clarity and planning early on? Equally, how do we challenge one another constructively? We get behind things, but we don't always share what we could. How can we challenge each other about maybe what we're not sharing, or the fact that we're perhaps sometimes getting behind the wrong things or the things that we haven't properly planned? How do we hold one another accountable? We don't call each other out. How would we start calling each other out, and what would that look like? How would we be doing that? And how might we inquire without blaming? The one that you see down there, the RACI and the 70-100, was a really sort of technical solution or behaviour, if you liked. What they agreed was that they really needed to take a planned approach. They needed to work out 4 decisions and 4 projects who needed to be responsible, accountable, support, consult, or be involved. And what they eventually agreed was what they called a 70-100 split, which was about cabinet solidarity. And for them, 70-100 meant we might have disagreements in the room, but if I'm 70% behind supporting an idea or a project or a key message, outside of this room, I'll 100% get behind it. So often we'd be having conversations about, well, okay, clearly there are differences of opinion here. Who's not in agreement? How far in agreement are you? And Eddie was very good in starting to ask the question, well, if you're at 70, what will get you to 80, or what will get you to 90? How can we ramp up the agreement, and how can we ensure outside of this room, even if I say, I, Moira, or I, Eddie, am only 70–80% in agreement, I will 100% support it outside in service of collective leadership and solidarity. So what they looked at were, what are the consequences? What are the things that are going on that we're not doing well in the best of? And what are the green card behaviours that will help us interrupt the cycle? The idea being, we talked earlier about it's very easy to get people to talk about the best of and worst of. You then need to have a process by which they can either address failure or sustain change or bring these behaviours to life. So if we were at Bonhill House doing this activity, for instance, we would probably be giving you red and green cards, sorry, that you would hand out to each other in the remainder of the time that we were together. And we'd give green card behaviours when we saw a green card, which was a supportive behaviour that was interrupting the cycle. To get a red card isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's an indication that we might need to do something differently, or we're keeping to the commitments we made. Makes sense? Tanya, I can see you. Davo, I can see you.
Well, a quick clarifying question. The behaviours that they're going to be challenging, testing out, giving cards on are actually the ones in the arrows, right? They're kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah. So it's about moving from west and burst. It's about moving from west and east to north and south. It's about moving from best and worst to thinking about, so what are the systemic or causal loops that we get into? What are the behavior patterns? You know, how does being passionate about customer lead us to have no shortage of ideas, lead us to get along, know what good looks like? How do these things loop, and how might we either interrupt them, or, you know, what are the red card behaviors that we fail to do, or what are the green card behaviors where we can interrupt that pattern and hold one another accountable, or inquire rather than blame, or challenge one another? Make sense? So you can guess what's coming next. So for this group, basically, here were their red and green. Once we'd done the causal loop, they agreed that there were some red card behaviors that they exhibited. They would compete, they'd tend to smooth over conflict, they'd ignore how they're going to do stuff, and they didn't address all of the failed projects. Whereas the green card that could interrupt the things that they wanted to start doing that they hadn't been doing were things about, let's get more clarity up front, let's challenge each other, let's hold one another accountable, and let's try and inquire rather than going like this to one another. Well, he said, he said, he said, she said. So those were their red and greens based on understanding the pattern of behavior. So you can guess what's coming next. I'm going to ask you to take the best and worst, whether you use Jamboard, whiteboard, whatever you used, and see if you can create a causal loop diagram for your supervision group. Is there a way in which one behavior begats the other, begats the other? And what behaviors do you use that might take you out of your best? And are there behaviors that you would encourage one another to take that you could really interrupt your worst cycle? And define 3 or 4 reds and greens for your supervision group. Again, we're going to ask you to take time out. And again, we're going to ask you to come back in to share a couple of behaviors you've agreed on and are learning from this process. And I'm just going to do a time check here because we're at 12:13. I'm going to suggest we try and come back by 12:35. How's that, Hilary? I'm looking at you. You're the only faculty member I can see. Do you want to nod or give me a thumbs down?
Do you think we can make it a little bit longer? Because this can take a little while.
Should we go to 12:40?
Can we, maybe we can connect between us at 12:40 to see how we're doing.
Okay.
But yeah, let's say 12:40, shall we?
12:40, and I'm going to stop sharing if we could open up the bogs.
And you did also say if people wanted to take a quick comfort break, Moira, they could.
John, I totally forgot that. Thank you so much for reminding me. In the supervision group, should you have a desperate need for a toilet break, which I know you might have, let's find a way to
Don't
take
let
that.
us stand in your way.
Physically, it's not possible anyway, John.
No, absolutely.
Precisely. Or sit in your way. Yeah.
Okay, going. Going.
You were just speaking about time. Tracy, there it's gone. Time.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, welcome back, folks. We've got 14 whole minutes.
Wow.
And I'm aware that we also need to talk about the next time we meet. Well, we need to briefly touch on the checking in on the learning community call date and the March date, sorry, and the pegs. That's what we need to check in on, the March dates and the pegs. So I'm going to share my screen for one final time today. In your groups, you were asked to think about maybe 2 behaviours and 1 learning. So with just a minute per supervision group, anything, and you might say nothing because you might feel you haven't had enough time to have a proper conversation, but anything saplings from you'd like to share, any commitments you've made or learnings?
Okay, I'm going to speak for the saplings. So thank you, saplings, for the session. I think where we were coming from was when we were at our worst, and we explored that a bit more, given the time commitment. So it was very much like one of the things that's coming up for us is wanting to be challenged. So it's the clarity of what we want the other people in our group to challenge us on, and to make that up front in our sessions. And the other thing was, if it becomes a point, like if something is emergent, asking the thing, is this something that we should spend time on? What's emerging here? And definitely that sort of parallels to our last session of stuff that was emerging, and then we chose to go into continue. So with us in a group, what are those 2 emerging? So there are 2 sort of areas that we want to commit to as a group.
Great, thank you, Suzanne. Wild horses.
I think one of the things that came up seemed to be about recontracting. Came up with nearly every point. Would you agree, Wild Horses? So at every stage, recontracting to find out how to check in, what's important for the session. Perhaps are we all doing what we need? Please chip in, the rest of you.
Yeah, and then I think what went with that was, real-time feedback and sharing of issues and tensions, so so everyone can know if something's an issue, and then the recontracting can happen.
Yeah, and I just want to, I think there's something interesting about the perception of the wild horses. And I think this is a great indication that we're really just the same as everybody else. We don't get everything done. We didn't have the things ready. Don't be jealous. Yeah, I mean, I think there's just something in there when you're working with groups about actually what can happen in between groups.
Yeah.
The assumptions you make about other people and other groups. And yeah, I think that's interesting.
Yeah, and this sort of in groups and out groups and shaking it all about groups.
Yeah.
Of course, we're not the same as everyone else, but everyone's different, and that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. Time travelers. Anybody want to speak on behalf of time travelers?
Okay, I'll say something. Or do you want to speak, Claire?
You can, Ian.
Well, ours is more about more effective use of time and contracting with one another, and very similar to what Suzanne was saying is, if we want challenge, what do we want in terms of challenge? So there's a lot there for us in bringing more discipline and more rigor into the way we work together.
And Team Mindful. Anybody going to speak on behalf of Team Mindful?
I think for us, it was very similar to Wild Horses. A big learning was how important contracting is, and to recontract because things evolve. Your understanding of why the group comes together changes, becomes clearer. So you just need to keep coming back to it. And a lot for us as well around the assumptions that we're making and surfacing those, clarifying in specific terms what each person needs or what they value, so that, you know, a way forward becomes clearer.
So it sounds like contracting came up in one form or another in every group. Okay. So Hilary, I'm going to pass the baton now to you because I know you want to talk about March and pegs. And do you want me to share my slides?
Yes, that would be great. Thanks, Moira. So,
there we go.
guys, we made a decision to put the, you know, this content, the secrets, the red and green, the toots and the sculpting into these 2 days, and recognizing it's been pretty intensive and packed, so apologies in some ways for that, but we thought it would be better to do it that way around, partly because when I asked for volunteers for case study owners, people seem to be prepared to do March but not February, but also we thought, well, if we do the input here, then you've got some more options for approaches and tools that you can try out if you want to in March. So I guess these 2 little tables show where I've got to in terms of the 2 days, 2nd and 3rd of March, in terms of case holder, volunteers and co-coaches. And we think that if there's desire from you guys, we could have 8 pairs, 4 on each day. And please shout loudly if I haven't got your name on this page and you have volunteered. I hope I've captured everyone, but basically you will see that I've tried to pair people either because they requested to be paired or because you're in different supervision groups. I hope I've got that right. But if we're going to have 4 cases on day 2, then I need 2 more case holders. And this is an opportunity to share cases across the community outside supervision groups. And also it's your last opportunity to practice on this program. So if you haven't brought your case study yet and you're ready to do something like that, please can you let me know, or shout now, or let me know in the next few days so that I can confirm the pairs. Vic, Brian and Ian, you've offered to be co-coaches. I can't assign you as co-coaches unless we have more case holders. So it's either you volunteering to be case holders or finding case holders from elsewhere. So first question, have I missed anyone off who said they wanted to volunteer? Maybe we should stop the screen.
Yeah.
Thanks, Moira. Not seeing anyone put their hand up. And secondly, is there someone who hasn't brought their case study yet who is willing to do so in March?
If you've agreed to be a co-coach, Hilary, does that mean you can't also bring a case, or you could do that too?
You could on another day. if you haven't already done so.
Okay.
Have you bought a case, Chris? You were going to and then didn't, is that right? I think you were going to and then you were...
Yes, you were going with me.
I can't remember, to be honest.
Yeah, first session.
First session, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can think about whether I've got a case to bring. I'm already co-coaching with Harriet, I think.
Yeah, you are. So my ideal, Chris, is that someone else uses the opportunity, but if not, then that's a possibility. Anyone willing to even consider it, even with some chat to one of the faculty over the next day or so?
And it really is a great opportunity to try something out and get some practice. I've got my salesman hat on now. I would just say, if you feel apprehensive, put that to one side, because you'll learn loads from doing it and it will be a great experience.
Yeah. So thank you, Andrew, for offering to consider.
Willing to consider. I was going to say, given my example of 70 to 100 earlier on, what will get you to 100? If you're 70% there, what will get you to 100?
My teams are all just they're all just started. So I just don't know if they've got enough meat on them, that's all.
So my other offer would be that if you find it's a bit too early to set up the role play, you could use it as a extended supervision session. That could be another way in which we could flex the design a bit.
Robert,
thank
as
you,
well.
Robert. Okay.
Any takers?
So I think that Robert and Andrew, and if there's anyone else who wants to consider, then please, let's give it, where are we now? Wednesday. Give it to Friday and contact any of us. Thanks, Andreas. Any of the faculty, if you want to chat it through by the end of the week. Is that okay? And then we'll send out the pairs and the groupings. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Can I just ask, people have asked me to save the Jamboards, which of course I'll do. If you want me to share them with you, at the minute, they're all on the same Jamboard, but on different pages. So if I share them with you, it means that you have the whole thing, or else I can have a go at sort of splitting them up, which might be preferable. And it would be useful to know just who you want me to share them with. So if you can let me know one person per group, drop me an email and I'll share the Jamboard with you.
So Moira, I think that's, is there anything else, any other questions about the March sessions?
No, I think just to say it's the same pattern as this week. It's the Tuesday, Wednesday, 2nd and 3rd of March, 9 till 1. I think the links aren't yet up. I'm also just aware of the comments about, can we get the documents out in plenty of time as well?
And just we haven't really created social time, have we, on this lap? So we definitely will do so. Make time for that next time.
Yeah.
Good. Should we do a checkout then, faculty?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, well, one word to encapsulate your attitude as you leave, or your emotion as you leave.
And maybe showing it in a pose if you can.
Good idea.
Show it.
Okay.
It was it was a very intense, but at the same time, I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thoughtful.
Rich.
Challenging.
spot on for where I am at my current place. So that's a spot.
Contented.
Intense.
I don't know.
Reflective. Filling in some gaps.
A lot to digest.
Welcoming.
Considered.
We had two people at once there. Mihaela,
Welcoming.
Ian.
Considered.
I think, was it Andreas as well who said something that we didn't?
Andreas, no, I wanted to say red hot inspiring. Red hot.
Graceful.
Lifted. Lifted.
Got sadness.
Sorry, I am.
What'd you say, Deborah?
I did a dance, Hilary. You missed it. I said I'm excited. Oh, clearly mischievous today.
Okay.
Good.
Anyone else?
Oh, deep.
Is that us then, folks? Anybody still want to say anything else?
Good to see you all.
Thank you,
And
everyone.
thank you very much for everything.
Big thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look forward
It's
to
been really
seeing
fun.
you.
Thank you for your wholehearted engagement in all of this.
You're wonderful
Thanks
human
very much.
beings.
See you.
See you. Thank you,
Bye, everyone.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye. Bye.